Middleborough Historical Society. I'd like to welcome you all to this presentation on Wales and Whaling history. I'd also like to welcome our home audience. We still have a couple more people coming in. We have enough seats. To really introduce myself, my name is Charlie Chase. I'm a docent at the New Bedford Whaling Museum. You can usually find me there on Wednesday afternoons out on the floor someplace. I'm also vice president of the Descendants of Whaling Masters. If you're interested in whaling history, or have whaling ancestors, they don't have to be a captain just because that's the name of our group. I would be happy to welcome you to our organization. Now, to really introduce myself, I want to go to here. Here we go. Now, all right, you're not connected. And I don't have to be connected.
We know, Charlie, you're not.
I have some friends here. I'm very thrilled with the fact that I've just met a couple of relatives that I didn't know I had. This is really cool. Both people in this picture are named Charlie Chase. The older one, Captain Charles A. Chase, is a veteran of 40 years at sea. Mastered a number of voyages, was quite famous in New Bedford, as we'll see a little bit later. Well known and a very successful captain.
Is that you?
The other one, that beady-eyed kid with the ears sticking out, yeah, Cub Scout, guess what? Yeah, that's me. All right. Now, if I go to the next picture. The next few pictures that we have, if my computer will cooperate. It doesn't seem to be doing so. Just what we need.
Oh, they're wonderful when they
There
go,
it is,
right?
yeah. Right.
Oh, there it is.
This stately-looking gentleman is Captain Jonathan Chase, my great-grandfather. I want to mention that this picture and the next two or three I acquired at the Sturgis Museum in Barnstable. It was a collection, a Chase collection, so supposedly, assembled by Lucy Loomis. I wanted to mention that because there's a few people in the audience that are good friends of her mother. Captain Jonathan Chase was mastered 4 voyages. I believe he did 8 voyages, master of 4, and he brought Charlie to sea when he was just 16. Caught him smoking, decided to bring him to sea to keep an eye on him, and secretly Charlie was absolutely thrilled with that. As Charlie spent his entire career, he thought that killing whales was exciting. He did it for the sport. In fact, I don't think he ever made very much money. All right, now let's see if we'll go to the next one. I should mention here that Jonathan had 3 younger brothers, all who went whaling. The oldest was Charles W. Chase, and we have some descendants of him here. And he did a number of voyages and was first mate on a few. Unfortunately, he had a run-in with a captain on the Charles W. Morgan. Interesting that Charles W. Chase was first mate on the Charles W. Morgan. But he didn't get along with the captain too well, and I guess he got a bad reputation, and he never got to be captain. 2 other brothers, George, his brother George, did 3 whaling voyages, and on the 3rd whaling voyage, the ship was reported in the mid-Atlantic about a month after it left New Bedford. That was the last anybody ever heard of that ship. His other brother, Pelike, did at least 2 whaling voyages, and then I believe he was back and forth on different ships, shipping from foreign ports, so I don't have a good record of him. But I know he died in Peru in 1871. So the whole family were all whalers. Okay, now go to the next one. How about cooperating? can always do it this way, maybe. I don't know why it's not, you know, it could be I need to plug this in. Oh, there we go. It's acting very, very slow. Yeah, this is Charlie again. Of course, I never saw him when he looked like this. And it's rather unusual because the family was Quakers. And he's really dressed up fancy here. I have another picture of him taken like a year or two later, and he's back in his sled runner jacket and he's got a broad hat and stuff. I thought that was kind of a neat picture that I acquired for the museum. You could have advanced this one. Here we go. This is Charlie again, and it's on board ship. This time he's with his wife Rachel. He took Rachel on several voyages with him. Usually the captain would have to pay board to the owners if he took his family or any family members with him. She signed on as an assistant navigator, so I think he got away. And I think she did know, there was quite a few wives that did learn how to navigate. I think she actually did that. He also brought his children several times.
What did they do?
One got hit in the head with a boom when he was 5, and that was the end of him. Yeah. It's not all good news, right? But yes, I'm not related to this guy, but he figures quite strongly in our family. His name is Captain Ed King, and on one voyage he sailed with. He was second mate on one voyage, and I'm not going to do the name. I left my notes on, but the first mate on that voyage was Charles W. Chase, and that was a 5-year voyage in the Indian Ocean. So they got to know each other pretty well. Well, later on, Ed became captain of the Morning Star, not to be confused with the brig Morning Star that was a packet ship serving missionaries in the Pacific. But on that voyage, Charles A. Chase, the one I showed you earlier, was fourth mate. Later on, someone else took command of the Morning Star, and he had to take time off to marry this lady right here, Emily Chase, my great aunt. Charlie and my grandfather's oldest sister. And then after the honeymoon, he sailed to St. Helena and retook command of the Morning Star. And with him, he brought Charles A. Chase and became first mate.
Charlie?
Yeah?
Was 5 years a normal tour?
That's a little bit long. Now it's going to skip. Now it's going to work real good, right?
Depends on how many whales they got.
Yeah. Yes, you had to bring the ship back full. Now, that's kind of a dubious term after a while because it turned out, the agents would say you got to collect a certain amount of oil, right? 3,000 barrels typically, right?
Okay.
So you went out and when if you sailed to the Pacific, you might pull into Honolulu, ship oil back from Honolulu, right? But you still go out, then you go out the next season somewhere else, right? And then after a certain point, you'd be waiting for that one last few whales. Ed King wrote, I transcribed the journal of his. I didn't think he'd never go to sea again because he kept saying day after day after day he was homesick. We got to get that one last that whale and go home. And it took months, right?
Oh, it did?
Right, yeah, it can happen sometimes. There's one other person I want to introduce you to.
Charlie,
Yeah?
what year are we talking about approximately?
This is the late 1800s. Charlie first went to sea in 1869. 1879. This lady right here, her name is Marion, and it's Charlie's younger daughter. He had 2 daughters and 2 sons, and one, as I mentioned, one died in the sea. I knew this lady really well. I lived in the same house. It was a duplex. As Charlie and Marion and her family the last few years that Charlie was around. And of course I knew Marion very well. she went to sea with him several times and of course learned how to do a few things. Here we have a journal. I transcribed a journal from the Andrew Hicks, which was a bark that Charlie mastered for 4 voyages, I believe. And the Andrew Hicks was called back from sea in 1916 because of the breakout of World War I. The Wings family wanted to protect the ship so that they could do some more whaling after the war. At the end of that transcription, of course, there's a bunch of blank pages. And then I saw some of the writing. And I went to that page. I may go to tears reading this. But it says, Diary of the C.A. Chase Farm. That farm is at the head of the Westport River. It doesn't say anyways on here who wrote this, but it took me about a minute to figure out it's Marion. And she talks about, if I can expand this a little bit, it's kind of neat. All right. So she talks about taking Charlie carried father by car to go on a whaling trip on the A.M. Nicholson as master. Little story about the A.M. Nicholson. This was in 1918 that this is written. In the summer of, A.M. Nicholson was a schooner. It did what's called plum duff runs. Those you go out for one season, 4, 5, 6 months maybe, come back with a load of oil, sell it, whatever you got, and then the ship would fit out again and go someplace else, so the South Sea for a few months. Well, in the summer of 1916, Captain Gonzalez took the ship to sea and went in the North Atlantic. So one day they're out to sea, a German submarine surfaces. The submarine captain comes up topside, and he orders the captain and his men to get to their boats because he's going to sink the ship. So he's talking to the captain, while they're assembling everybody, and he says to him, "Your English doesn't sound right. Are you American?" "Oh no, we just Portuguese." "Oh, Portuguese. Oh, I like them. They've been all over the world. They make friends everywhere. I tell you what you do. You go back to port and stay there, and don't go to sea again. And I won't sink the ship." So they went back to port. Well, a few months later, Charlie took it up. I don't think Charlie would have survived that little thing. That would have been too good for him. But anyhow, so she took Charlie to the ship and went back, and she picked up some hay in Fall River and went back to the farm. So if I scroll down this page, there's an interesting entry down here. Let's see.
Yes.
Right here. I think this is the one. Yeah. October 20th, very good weather all day. Sam, Emily, and Jill. Emily was her older sister. Her older sister was married, had children already, so Sam helped her with the farm sometimes. She was basically running the farm herself. She was 19 years old. Sam helped out, and Emily, of course, Emily had children, so they had other things they had to do. They went to Tiverton, and then it says here, Stuart and I husked corn. All turned out fine. Stuart was 11 at the time. His father died when he was 7. He was from a family of 10. His 2 youngest brothers stayed home with their mom, and all his older siblings ran the farm in Dartmouth. I know this well because Stuart is my father.
All right.
So I was quite excited to find that journal. All right, let's talk about whales for a while. Here we have, this is a southern right whale. There are 3 groups of right whales. As you know, northern right whales are highly endangered. There's only about 400 of them left, right? North Pacific right whales are also highly endangered. They don't even know how many there are. They're much more difficult to count. Southern species they're in pretty good shape. Unfortunately, the species can't, they're not different species anyway, but the different groups can't get together. These whales have a whole lot of blubber on them. They're cold water animals.
Major differences between the 3?
Not really, no. But the thing is they can't cross the equator. So they can't get together.
Big
Are
sign.
they endangered because they're hunted, or is it because of plastic?
The northern right whale was hunted a lot by Yankees, right, and by Europeans too. Where some other species of whales have recovered, this whale hasn't. And the reason it hasn't is because it feeds close to shore. It has to, and it migrates between like Newfoundland and Florida. There's, so they have to go through all the hazards on the way. Ship strikes, they're very slow moving, they're hard to see because they're black. So ships, propellers kill them,
Sure.
and they get trapped in lobster traps and fishing gear.
They
Right.
went in the paper.
Right, yes. 2 years ago, there were no births, and it was really scary. Last year, there were 7 births, and which nothing to get excited about, because the scientists said we need at least 12 or 13 to increase the numbers. Well, because of the Atlantic is warming more, the copepods, their favorite food, is moving north. And so they knew where their shipping lanes were. They had moved the shipping lanes around where they feed, but they didn't know they were feeding further north. 9 died from ship strikes this past year. Right. If you look here, you see the way these animals feed. This is baleen in their mouth. They don't have teeth. And I'll show you the next picture. This is also a right whale, and you can see the baleen here. They swim along the surface of the water, or real close to the surface, and copepods are really, really tiny animals, right? They eat phytoplankton, they're zooplankton, and so he just goes along, and he's got this little membrane up here, or organ, that scientists are still working on. But it basically says, hey, you got some food in there. So he closes his mouth and he uses his big tongue to push water out through that big filter right there. And then he licks the inside of it and gets a nice mouthful of food. I got a piece of baleen here that I borrowed from the museum this morning. This is pretty interesting stuff. You see this, they're like this in plates all along his jaw. There's hundreds of them, right? So it forms a filter. So when he gets a whole bunch of zooplankton in his mouth, he simply pushes the water out through the filter, and then there's the food. Okay. Notice that this is flexible. Okay? This was really important to 19th century whalers, because these things you can make leaf springs out of this for buggies. Early automobiles had it for leaf springs. Favorite for you ladies is making those busts that you stick in the front of your corsets, right? Okay. Ribs for umbrellas, buggy whips that I mentioned. So this stuff sold for 80 cents a pound.
Why wouldn't it clog up?
Well, the whale keeps it clean with his tongue, right? Okay. When they killed a right whale or a humpback, they cut this out of the jaw. They had to clean this really well, because it would start to rot, this stuff would go bad. That was one of the things the sailors had to do. But this stuff sold well, and there was a period of time in the late 19th century when they were actually going into the Arctic, killing whales, cutting this out, and leaving the rest of the whale, because oil wasn't selling well. That's one of the reasons the Inupiat said the Yankees insult the spirit of the whale.
Yeah, it's true.
Here we have a different kind of a baleen whale. This is a blue whale. And you notice that you see that the mouth isn't the same. They don't eat the same way. These guys eat krill, and humpbacks eat herring and stuff. What they do is they dive down in the water, and sometimes they'll circle and try to make their prey come together. And then they'll come up out of the water. And when they come up, all these ripples unfold. If you saw him swimming when he wasn't feeding, he's nice and smooth. The whalers call them sulfur bottoms. This stretches out so much you could put 2 full-grown elephants in there, okay, in his mouth, right? So he comes up with this huge mouthful of food, does the same thing, pushes the water out with his tongue and swallows. You notice the baleen is much smaller, because he's got such a big mouthful, he doesn't need to get such a whole lot of stuff in there before he gets a mouthful. Right? All right, let's look at your favorite whale. Here we have sperm whales. I picked this picture off the internet because it's sperm whales tend to run in pods, a bunch together. Usually when a whale ship spotted sperm whales, the captain would always say lower all the boats or lower at least 3 boats, because they knew that there were several out there and they wanted to chase them all. Now these guys have got teeth. They're only on the lower jaw. They eat much differently than the baleen whales. I have a couple of teeth here. These are from a small sperm whale, because the larger teeth ends up guys love to make scrimshaw out of. So that's why I inherited these, because they weren't quite so useful. But my Aunt Marion mentioned to me that this is where the gum line is on the whale. The gum line. This is embedded in his gum, and this is how much of the tooth is exposed. These guys feed on giant squid and colossal squid, 1.5 miles down in the ocean. They dive when they're on the surface. It's kind of neat what they do, because when on the surface they breathe and breathe and breathe, right? Their bloodstream can hold a lot more hemoglobin than ours, or has more hemoglobin, so therefore can hold more oxygen than ours. So they saturate their blood with oxygen, and then they exhale and die. And as they're going down, their rib cage folds back. Their ribs aren't connected rigidly to their backbone. So they actually fall back, making their lungs small, and that way they can handle the pressure. So they go down. Now when you get down 1.5 miles, they can't see anything, right? Well, they use echolocation. They have a noisemaker right here. It kind of goes. I used to be on a submarine, and I could, if I got in the sonar, I could put the earphones on and hear that. But they would make that sound that bounced off what's called the case. This part of his head is filled with what's called spermaceti, very valuable to whalers. This stuff, you can make candles out of it, or use it for lighthouse lamps. It burned with a clear white flame, no smoke. It's sold for $1.50 a gallon in 1850 at the pier, wholesale price, right? So the sounds go out, of course, and they bounce off the squid, and it comes back. He picks it up with his jaw. He can draw a mental picture of the squid, and he'll come up, he'll grab him, kill him, swallow him, and he's got 3 stomachs, so they have to chew his food, right? There's kind of a neat little thing about these things too. You'd think for a while, things that die in the ocean sink to the bottom, right? There's an ecosystem down there with smaller animals, and the giant squid and the colossal squid are the very top of that ecosystem, right? So you think after a while that most of the energy in the ocean is at the bottom, right? Well, these guys are the ones that they go down and they kill squid. They come back to the surface and they digest it on the surface. And when they poop, whale poop kind of neutral buoyancy, it'll float. Works a new ecosystem. So they're the thing that's bringing energy up from the bottom of the ocean back to the top again. Let's look at some of the tools of whaling. This picture was obviously taken in Mystic, because that's the cutting stage from the Charles W. Morgan. This is a pretty good copy of a 19th century whaleboat, but it's very similar to whaleboats going back several hundred years. The Bass and the Dutch were doing whaling in the 16th century. And there's an exhibit right now I don't think is going to be there much longer at the New Bedford Whaling Museum, and it's Dutch marine paintings. And if you look at those, their boats are very similar to this. They're a little rounder at the front and back. But there's 6 men, 5 oarmen and a steerer, in a boat at a steering.
Was that about 30 feet?
Yeah, they're about 30 feet, a little longer, I think. 5 oars. I think the oars are slightly different lengths, so that they kind of balance out a little bit. There's a rudder on this, but he uses the steering wheel because it's quiet. You want to do everything quiet. Everybody's barefoot in there. They even have, besides the oars, they have paddles. so they can sneak up on a whale when it's asleep. Sleeps half the brain at a time. To make a noise and galley a whale, very, very shameful. I've read several logs where the log keeper puts, the ship over there gallied the whale, or the third mate gallied the whale, and if he hadn't done that, I would have got him, You get that all the time. When they get close to a whale, the boat header, who's usually one of the mates, will signal this guy, and so he'll get up and give it to him, right? And he'll stand up, and he'll turn around and he'll pick up a harpoon. And you see that right in there, there's a little slot in the front of the boat. That's where he's gonna lock his leg in. It's called a clumsy cleat. So he locks his leg in there so he gets balance, and he takes a harpoon and he'll drive the harpoon into the whale. Okay. Early on, through most of the whale era, they had two harpoons spliced into one thing. I'll show you that in a few minutes. But once they harpoon the whale, there's a couple of tubs in here. You can't really see, but there's 300 fathoms of line in 2 tubs. And the boat header will take, and he'll put two layers of rope. See that thing right there? That's called a loggerhead. So the line will come out of the tubs around the loggerhead, a couple of laps, up through the center of the boat and out through the front, the bow right here. You see that slot? There's a little black brass roller on there for the line to roll on.
How much line again?
What's that?
How much line again?
300 fathoms,
Which is,
1,800 feet.
wow.
So if it's a sperm whale and he sounds, you just let it go. And that line will be whipping around the waterhead, and there's a guy with a cup pouring salt water on it to keep the line from catching on fire. Right, yep.
How do they keep from catching there and they get whipped overboard?
You watch out for that, right? Yeah, you have to, that's, every once in a while that happens.
Yeah.
Of course, it can't come out of the front here because there's a pin that holds it in place. Looks like, this is actually a pencil. You can buy this for a couple of bucks at the museum. But this is what's called a chop pin. And it sits right across here above the line to hold the line in place. This story comes in pretty cool. So, to look just a little further, let's look at the harpoons. This was a standard harpoon for a very long time. Single flute. Like I said, they usually put 2 of them because what would happen is you harpoon the whale and it would tend to draw her out. So if you harpoon the whale and you grab the second harpoon and throw it, one of them is probably going to stay. You got a chance of catching the whale. All right. So here's the next one. Same idea. This is a double fluted harpoon. Neither one worked real better than the other, right? Somewhere around 1850, there's a guy in New Bedford whose name is, cooperate. All right. His name is Lewis Temple. If you saw him at work, he wouldn't look like this. He was a blacksmith, right? And he invented a harpoon. And I got this one. I brought a harpoon, and I thank you for standing guard on it. That was I had to do that to get permission to be in here with this. This is the harpoon he invented. Now, if you see, there's a little hole right here, okay? And what he would do is they put a stick in this, a little piece of stick in this hole, right? So now, when the harpooner darted the whale, it would go into the whale, and then when the whale, would get scared and try to get away, it would try to pull out, the pin would break, and this would toggle and lock in.
Cool.
Right. So after that, you didn't need two harpoons. This did the trick, right? Lewis Temple, unfortunately, knew nothing about patents, and so others stole his ideas, and he died poor. There is a statue to him in front of the New Bedford Library. Okay, now that, like I said, whaling has started with the bass and the Dutch. They used to go north, and they'd go to an island. They'd bring up some of those whale boats in a ship, and they would drop them off, and they'd set up a station on the island. And guys would go out in the boats nearby, catch a whale, kill it, bring it back to the shore, and then they would boil the blubber out in pots on the shore. And at the end of the season, when it decided to get cold, they went all the way up to Spitsbergen. When it got cold, the ship would pick them all up, bring the oil back, okay? That was their modus. Yankee whalers did the same thing. They teamed up, the early Yankee whalers teamed up with Native Americans. They would set lookouts out, and they'd look for a whale. If they saw it, they'd send a signal, and they'd go out in boats. And then they would harpoon the whale, and they had a big log attached to the harpoon. Let them drag that thing around for a while. When they got tired, they'd all come up to them with spears and start getting them until they killed them, right?
Your first photograph, whatever, showed the Straits of Malacca. That's way out in the Pacific. Did they go out that far out?
Oh, yes.
Really?
Yes, I'll show you. That's coming up in a little bit. Because what happened let's go to the late 1600s. You'll know what Massachusetts was like then. There were a group of people who got together and said, we got to get away from these Puritans. Right? So they heard that there was a Native American word that meant the farthest island out. Sounded something like Nantucket. Let's go there and get away from these Puritans, right? So they went out to Nantucket and they settled. And they started farming. No luck. You can farm in Nantucket, but it's not a very good place to farm. So they said, we got to find something to do. Well, they knew there was whaling going on. There was a little bit in the Cape, and there was more on Long Island. So they hired a guy from Long Island to come and teach them how to whale. So over the next couple of generations, or the next few generations, the entire island, the whole culture of the island was whaling. You had people they were building sloops at first, whale ships, and they had to build whale boats, and they had to make the irons and the sails and the clothes for the men, So everybody's involved with whaling, and everybody knows what everybody else's job is worth, right? So what would happen is that there was a system of lays. When you signed on a whaling voyage, you got a lay, which meant when you came back from the voyage, how much you made depended on how much oil you got. So when you sell the oil, the captain would get something like a 15th of all that money from the whale oil.
50%?
15th.
15.
A 15th, right. The mates would get a 30th, 40th in there, right? The harpooners, so-called boat steerers, would get maybe a 90th or 100th, something like that. Green hands got 190th, right? So everybody figured out after a while that the only people that really made any money on a whaling voyage was the captain and the mates. So a gal wouldn't agree to marry a guy until he killed his first whale. Okay. So now, one of the things I didn't mention to you, and I probably ought to go back a little bit. Let's go back a few pictures. When they harpoon a whale, that doesn't kill the whale, of course, right? They harpoon the whale and he takes them on a Nantucket sleigh ride. Now, while they're on a sleigh ride, this guy here, the harpooner, and the mate, they switch places. Big tradition going back to the bass that the mate has the privilege of the kill, right? So what he'll do when the whale tires, they put up next to him, and he'll take a lance, which is essentially a long spear, and he spears the whale in his life, heart and lungs. And he keeps spearing him until he blows blood out of his blowhole, and the guys all yell, "Chimney's afire!" And then so the whale dies and they haul it back. Okay, well, so in Nantucket, when a guy was signed on a whaling voyage, he started out as a Norman, and then after another voyage or two, he'd get promoted to what's called boat steerer. Because remember, he steers the boat after he switches places. And then his next promotion is he becomes a mate, and he gets to do the kill. Right? So now, when this guy gets back to Nantucket, he'll come up here, he'll sneak up here, and he'll steal one of these things, okay? And now he'll put it in his pocket and go walking around Nantucket, so the ladies will know he's an eligible bachelor. Okay. All right, moving on. So, yeah, the tripods. Yeah, this one I didn't want to skip. So, as in Nantucket, they started out whaling similar to what I was explaining before. They go out away from Nantucket, catch right whales. Right whales they're slow swimmers. They got a lot of blubber. They don't sink too quick when you kill them. So it's the right whale to hunt. So they hunted them for a while, and then after a while they learned one of the captains killed a sperm whale and found out how valuable that oil is, you know. So let's catch those, right? But they needed to go further and further from shore. Well, you can only go so far. You bring the whale back to shore, the whale's going to stop rotting, right? Okay, that whale. So they had to figure out some way to try the whale out on the ship. That's when they invented this thing. This is called a tripods. Triworks. This is not necessarily a ship under construction because they would tear these down at the end of every voyage, so that to make the owners would have to rebuild it for the safety of the ship. Down here on the bottom there's a tank of water, and then you got all this brickwork here, and you see it's still under construction. They would surround the kettles and the casing with all this brickwork to protect the ship from the fire. When they're boiling oil on, you can see flames and smoke from miles and miles away, so that another ship would report in their log, see such and such a ship 10 miles off boiling, right? So with this, they knew how to try out a whale at sea. Well, yes?
Do you think Herman Melville gave a very accurate description of all this in Moby Dick?
That's pretty good. Yes, he did, yeah.
I thought it was, yeah.
Yes, it was quite close, quite close. So, basically what that did, I could say that put Nantucket on the map, but more, it made him own the map, because now you can go anywhere in the world and whale, right? They started, at first the Nantucket sailors explored the Atlantic. There's whaling grounds in this area, there's whaling grounds off the La Plata, there's whaling grounds off the coast of Africa, where my great-grandfather whaled a lot. Now, if you were to sail from New Bedford, and you sailed east for about a day, you'd pick up the Gulf Stream, right? And you're also sailing with the prevailing westerlies. So that's going to take you on a little course of kind of a curved course like this. You don't have to be much of a navigator to get to this spot right here. That's the Azores. Nearly all the voyages, there were a few voyages that went from here and went north here, but nearly all the voyages that left New Bedford, Nantucket, anyways in New England, the first stop was the Azores. And they talked about recruiting. They didn't recruit people there. When they talked about recruiting, they meant fresh water, fresh vegetables, hogs, chickens, right? Sometimes, when Azores went to war, Portugal owned the Azores, but a lot of the people in the Azores were Flemish, and they didn't want to have to fight in the Portuguese war when they were conscripting people from the Azores. So they'd be happy to sign on to a whaling voyage then. But mostly what they did with the whalers from here, they went from here and they sailed straight south, and they stopped here. Cape Verde Islands. Now that's a good place to pick up sailors. Good cheap labor. They didn't charge much. Most of them were happy to just survive. Right? There were a couple of rogue captains, really bad guys, who took a whale ship, would go from there to here. They'd pick up a load of slaves, and they used the tripods to make food for them. And they'd sail across over to here to the Caribbean and sell them. That was very, very few, but there were a couple of guys that did that. But most of you picked up sailors here, and they were pretty happy to come aboard. That's one of the reasons there's a big Cape Verdean community in New Bedford now. Now, if you look how important this is to a sailor, because if you're going to go to the South Atlantic, you go from there. If you're going to go into the Indian Ocean, you can go down the coast of Africa. And if you're going to go into the Pacific, look, you just missed South America. So you can sail right down, pick up the Southeast trades, sail along the coast of South America around the Horn this way. The Nantucket whalers did all that. And they kept going, and they got into the Pacific. They explored all this area for whales and much of the Pacific. Then they found there's an area right around here someplace, north and south of the equator, right about that I'm drawing in, maybe a little bit further into this side. That was a great whaling ground for sperm whales. Nantucket became a sole, they hunted sperm whales exclusively after that. Virtually all their voyages went here. New Bedford whalers and some of the other Yankees, they weren't so fussy. They kept exploring. They went up into the Sea of Japan, catching sei whales, into the Oshkosh Sea, catching right whales, the Oshkosh Sea here. And finally through the Bering Strait into the Arctic. And that's where they caught bowhead whales.
Charlie,
Yeah?
about how long would it take to go from New Bedford to the Pacific?
6 months, maybe. That's why you didn't come, that's another way to do a 4-year voyages. But they didn't come back from there. Right. They wouldn't come back from there. They would get from here. They'd usually go to Hawaii to Honolulu, so-called sandwich islands, right? And they would ship oil back from there for about 3 years before they come home. So it was a worldwide operation. It's because of their invention of tripods. Now I just wanted to show you this. This is where I get a lot of my information. If you're into this kind of stuff, you can go on the Mystic Seaport site, and if you hunt around for a while on the Mystic Seaport site, you see this whaling shipping list and merchants transcript. This was published weekly from 1842 to 1914. They're all transcribed. I picked this one here from November 14th, 1871 for a reason. Because the second page of this one, right here, is got a story that a captain sent in from the that just returned to Honolulu. 1871, that summer, there were a whole fleet of Yankee whalers in the Arctic. They had already learned that the winds blow back and forth. So if the ice is, looks like it's encroaching on you, the wind would change in a few days and go the other way. That particular summer, the wind never shifted again. It started coming out in the northwest, and it was pushing them towards the shore on the north side, on the north slope of north side of Alaska. Finally, when ships started crushing because they had no room anymore, they said, "We got to do something about this." They sent a whaleboat south along the coast, looking to see if there was any whale ships free of the ice, and they found 4. One of which is the Lagoda. That's the ship that's our model's named after in the museum. They found them, and they were free of the ice. So they told them what was happening. They said, "We'll wait." So they went back to the ships. They loaded everybody in boats, and they went on 150 miles. There were women and children on there with the captains, right? They went 150 miles, and they abandoned 33 vessels that were crushed by the ice that winter. Right? So, a lot of the historians point to this as one of the reasons of the demise of the industry, right? Which I don't really agree with. Of course, the discovery of oil is the biggest thing of all, right? 1859, they discovered oil in Pennsylvania. I found in a lot of voyages in the late 1800s, there were so many ships out there, or this time anyway, the 1870s and so 60s and 70s, there were so many ships out there that they were putting each other out of business. Ships would, you'd send a season, and one ship would have 3,000 barrels, a couple would have 2,000 barrels, and the rest would all be losing money. Right? Take out 33 wet vessels, and I think that's one of the reasons that people like my great uncle and Ed King made so much money. They were successful captains because there was less competition. Now, let's see what happened. The rest of this, I think, is all about a little bit about my uncle. And you see what he. Oh no. Okay, I got to show you this. Can you help me? I got this banner. I was jealous because the president of the Descendants of Whaling Masters lives directly across the street from the Whaling Museum. And if you go to the Whaling Museum, you go out of the deck where you're overlooking in the summer, when you're overlooking the harbor, you'll see one of these. He's got it fly in from his apartment, right? So I got one so that I fly it every once in a while for my flag, but mostly I save it for events like this. This is the Wings house flag. All the ships owned by the Wings family would have this on one of the highest masts, right?
You don't confuse that with the rising sun?
Yeah, no, they were pretty good at figuring these things out. What you're looking at right now is the Charles W. Morgan when it was in New Bedford 5 years ago. If you call the Charles W. Morgan, of course, was owned by Charles W. Morgan, but he needed some money and he sold the ship for some other investment. He sold it to the Wings brothers. So you see the flag right there, the house flag? There it is. Captain Kip Files was the captain of the Morgan on that voyage. And every day he'd have his crew up there bending sail to show off to the people that were visiting. This one I really like, this picture. This is the Platina in 1906. Now, it was sitting, what a ship would do, when it was ready to go to sea, it would come out into the harbor somewhere and would anchor. And now they have all these crew members. They got recruited. The recruiters would tell them how wonderful life is on a whaling vessel, and how much, how the food's wonderful, and you got to see all these women in grass skirts. Well, they get on the ship and they didn't want to stay there. So what they do is they'd send the guys by train, and they'd get off the train, and they'd immediately put them on a boat and bring them to the ship out in the middle of it's anchored, so they can't get away. Right? Right. Well, this isn't even that. Well, then the next thing that would happen is there would be a pilot would come out, take the ship out into Buzzards Bay, all the way out of the harbor, right? Because they knew where every rock was and all that kind of stuff. And then the ship would hove to. You notice the sails are fighting each other; they're in different directions, so the ship won't make any headway. The captain will come out in a pilot boat, and then the captain will go on the ship and take command. Like his wife and the owners will sail out with him just to say goodbye, and then the pilot will get back and go back, and then they go to sea. Well, this is the Platina in 1906, and I'm pretty sure that this photo was taken from the pilot boat. So my Uncle Charlie would have been on the pilot boat going out to do that. This picture's quite look, here we are at this library. I wanted to show you this. This is cutting in a sperm whale, and you see the guys go out and stand on the cutting stage. And they use long cutting stakes to cut the blubber, and that's all connected to a long a block and tackle. And the guys are up on the windlass, and they're cranking the windlass. And as they pull this piece up, they're cutting and cutting. That's called a blanket piece. That'll get cut up into smaller pieces and then boiled out. This particular picture was in 1906, the same time that my uncle took command of the Platina. Clifford Ashley shipped on the Sunbeam, which is kind of a disappointment to me because my uncle was master of the Sunbeam on the very previous voyage that ended in 06. But he was on that voyage and he took a lot of pictures and the guy's amazing. He's an artist, he can draw, he's a photographer, fantastic knot tie. Thousands, there's a kid from Clifford book of knots. It's got thousands of knots in it, that different patterns and stuff that he can design. One of his books is here in this library. So I wanted to show you this particularly because Clifford. Yeah.
Is that fins from sharks feeding?
Yeah, there's sharks there that they'll eat the whale. I read one story where a whale sunk in shallow water, so they were going to, and night was coming in. So the next morning they were going to come over with more boats and try to hook on and bring it up. There wasn't anything left by the morning. Right? Yes. This is also a Clifford Ashley. This is, let's see, the Sunbeam's forecastle. That's where the guys live. When you find out where your bunk's going to be, you immediately want to leave. And you're going to be seasick all the time because it's in the very bow of the ship and it does this. And you can imagine how seasick these guys get. He had to draw this because I think there's a set of bumps right here on the real one, so he couldn't have photoed it. Right. But the guys would live there for 4 years. They'd eat their meals, sit on their sea chests, right, do their hobbies, make scrimshaw. That was their life for 4 years. You were either working or you were sitting in here. Right. Oh yeah, when you're processing a whale, trying them out, it takes a couple of days, and you got one change of clothes, right? So, and just think of the poor sailor when you're trying out when you're working on a sperm whale. They haul the whole head aboard. Okay, they cut the head open and dish out the spermaceti. Remember I told you this stuff is really expensive, right? And when they got down near the bottom and they couldn't reach any further, hey, young sailor, climb in there and get it. Right. So this is what they did for a hobby, right? They made scrimshaw. You notice that bone's a lot, but that's probably a 70 or 80 barrel sperm whale. They measured sperm whales in barrels, and it was amazing. They'd see a whale in the water, and the mate would log, X number, 50 gallons per whale, and then they try it out, and he would record stowed down 48 barrels. He was really close all the time. Now I think we go, no, yeah, right. I would skip 2. So my uncle finally retired after World War I. The Wings was ready to send the Andrew Hicks back to sea again. They said, okay, Charlie, let's do it. He was ready to fit it out. He found out that all of his key crew members, mates and boat steerers and Cooper, they'd all died, either in World War I or in the pandemic. He says, I got no crew. So he retired and they sold the Sunbeam. He retired to his farm in Westport. He was there for quite a few years. And when he got a little older, he started just spending his summers in Westport. And I remember that. I was old enough to remember going out there. And in the winters, he lived with his daughter on Union Street in New Bedford, just around the corner from the Whaling Museum. So he went there every day, and he volunteered, and he told stories to the kids. That harpoon's a lot smaller than mine, because the Lagoda is a half-size model, so that's a half-scale model. It's a half-scale harpoon. So he retired from there sometime before 1953 when I went, and it was only a couple of years before that, I believe. But he still was kind of active in things. There were 3 movies. There were 3 movies about whaling that premiered in New Bedford. Okay, that was the third one. The first one was Harpoon, 1948. You see, John Bromfield was featured. That was at the Orpheum Theater. I believe I was there, but I was only 4 or 5. So anyhow, Bromfield was there, and they had a whaleboat set up, and he went and addressed the audience, and Charlie was there too, and he talked to the audience, told them a little about whaling. He says, I know you people don't know what I'm talking about anymore, because everybody's forgotten about what it's all about. There were 2 more movies. The second one was in 1953, and it was called All the Brothers of Valiant. And the third one was 2 years later, and that was, of course, Moby Dick. And it was a big deal because, Moby Dick, Gregory Peck came to New Bedford, right? And there was a parade, right? We all, and right out there, he was going to pick up Charlie and bring him to the premiere. Charlie died a month before. So Gregory Peck picked up Marion and brought her. My mom and I sat 2 seats behind him in that premiere, right? Right, yeah. Well, I saved this next picture for last. I was supposed to be 45 minutes. I'm only about 8 minutes over. Because we have a group of historians here, and we have historians watching us. And I have a little challenge for you. Remember I mentioned that second movie, All the Brothers of Valiant. Here we have a picture of Ann Miller, right? Ann Miller with my Uncle Charlie. And they're talking about last night's performance. It was All the Brothers of Valiant, right? She brought him to the show. Here's the problem, she wasn't in the show. There was only one woman in that show, female, and it was Ann Blythe. I don't know why she was there. And I've had other people mention that to me too. So maybe somebody can figure that out sometime to let me know. I thank you all for attending.